Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or perhaps you just want to better understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about the consequences of growth.
The costs and consequences of growth.
Ooh, man. Diplomat over here.
Whew. Growth. What is growth?
Growth is, as my former assistant, now warehouse packer, put it the other day, when I used to make buttons, that took me about an hour a week when I started. Now, making buttons can sometimes be hours a day. I don't have time for this. Somebody else has to do this. And I feel like you could really apply that logic to every aspect of the operation.
So when you're growing, so you know your business is growing when everything takes longer than it used to?
Yeah, when you have the idea that something is like a simple task that you can do yourself, and then you find that, when you finished, your workday is over. And you don't actually get to the things that are actually important.
Right. And then so when you see that happen, what do you do?
Well, that's when you really have to start taking steps back and planning. Because, initially the way the brain thinks is like, oh, this is temporary. This is going to go back to the way that it used to be. Like, I don't, and part of that is like insecurity and, it's like the imposter syndrome and things where you really don't think that you're on an upward trajectory. You really think of it as like, oh, success is a fluke, not a continuous trend, And
like, how do you know the difference, though, like between a fluke and between a continuous trend?
How long it lasts.
Fair enough.
And so, we went through similar things earlier this year where we were like, wow, we're really doing a lot of mail order. Wow, we're really doing a lot of gift business. And then, after a while, we were like, oh, this is not going away. This is just how this is now.
For me, how I knew it was kind of here to stay was when, like, multiple systems started to fail in a cascade. Like, it wasn't just, like, I was suddenly spending all day doing something with a data spreadsheet that I had never had to do before for more than an hour.
Right.
It was that, like, because I had been doing that, I wasn't managing the person who had to do this other thing, and then so on and so on.
Right. And, you can get to the point where you're not able to keep tabs on things that are important or where people need you or, and we've run into that one over and over this year. 2020
has been full of gifts and consequences.
It's the unlikeliest timeline, as our publicist Lydia has taken to calling it.
So what is so growth is usually seen as a good thing and even a necessary thing for a business, but it also has its downsides.
Yeah, I guess, right. It's it's kind of what you want out of it. The first book I read about publishing was called The Reluctant Capitalist, which I feel like tells you everything you need to know. But yep. It's because growth is double-edged, because most of your systems are built for the size that you're at. So it's harder to think about being a size above or below. And I do feel like it's the patriarchal capitalist system that makes people really so simultaneously insecure that they'll ever do any better than they are now, and also at the very same second think that if they ever shrunk below the level that they are now, it would be so humiliating that they just couldn't deal with that, so and neither of those things are healthy or likely. You know, in all likelihood, you are going to go up and down and up and down, you know. And especially in publishing, you know, depending on what kind of publishing you do, you have certain amounts of fluctuation, seasonally, etc. You know,
due to natural disasters and
or just as trends change and you move out of trend, or you know, you have a big hit and then it tapers off and you don't fill it with a new hit. You know, that's sort of the problem we've had the most over the past, you know, 12, 13 years. And so if you look at it that way, you know, you should expect it, or you should plan to have just, you know, certain mid-list, check out our previous episode on the mid-list sensibilities, to really not aim too high or too low, you know. But, you know, even then, you'll just get to the point where you're getting more submissions, better submissions, having more books that sell a higher average number of copies each, and you'll just get to the point where you're growing, you know. So better to lean into that and figure out what to do with that. And similarly, if you're not at the place that you were a year ago, if you're smaller, then, you know, you work that way. You know, you figure out what jobs you can consolidate, you know, what aspects are maybe not even important to the organization anymore.
So when you do determine you're growing and you're stepping back and you're making a plan, what are the most important considerations? Like, what are your first steps probably going to be?
Removing aspects of the operation that do not leverage growth. Because, you know, you find some, like...
so cutting down instead of adding?
Many, many moons ago, in a different era, we used to sell custom manufacturing services. And I can tell you, the kind of people that want that service are very entitled. And you run into these people that, you know, it's like everybody is having an emergency and you're, you know, the amount. It's, you know, nobody goes into publishing to do that for somebody that really thinks that everything is a rush, you know. And so it got to the point where we looked at the numbers and we were just like, okay, well, this is hundreds of dollars a month, and it's like one of our greatest stressors because we aren't making much from each job. We should just cut it, you know. It's like not why anybody is here, you know. People are here to make books. And then similarly, in more recent years, you know, we cut t-shirts for sort of the same reason, that it's not something where it's going anywhere good. You know, we're getting less and less out of it each year. You know, there's probably other people that are doing it really well, but, you know, it's just not for us, you know. And so those are the kinds of things where and you don't want to cut things that hold morale up or build meaning and purpose for your people, but you want to cut things where, you know, nobody's really that attached to it and it's kind of holding you back. We had a similar issue with our, we had a retail store. We have a retail store, and that's sort of like one of the current rubs is like what we put into it does not equate to what we get out of it, but at the same time, it's like something that, you know, it's like meaning and purpose for people.
Yeah.
Customers, employees alike.
I mean, right now, that's kind of a question we can table for a little while.
True.
But 2021, we're going to have to decide what to do about the store.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, things like that. That's sort of the most important thing about managing growth. It's like taking a good, hard look at why you're here, what you care about, what is leveraging the most growth for you, and then making informed decisions about what is not leveraging growth for you.
I feel like one thing I often fall prey to when I'm planning for things is it's really easy to see what's not working and to want to put more energy into the things that aren't working.
I know, it's so human of you.
But I have learned that when you put more energy into the things that are working, everything works better.
Yeah, right. I know it isn't often a tendency, and I've had this tendency, and I've succeeded and thrived with this tendency at times. When you have a book that just completely flopped, to really be like, okay, well, if we just tried harder and we put more behind it, you know, and you can, but it's never going to be the best use of your time. There's a reason it flopped.
And so eventually you might want to manage your growth by like hiring a new person or outsourcing something to a contractor, or I don't know. How do you know when to do that?
When you can't do the work of the most important growth leveraging on your own. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
On Twitter at Microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.